Hey, David here, and welcome to my series on the film look. Let's get started with episode 3. In episode 2, we talked about the moment everything shifted, when film was still the capture medium, but digital crept into the workflow. We were shooting on film, scanning to tape, editing digitally, and finally outputting back to film or broadcast video. Then Red arrived in 2007 with raw digital cinema. ARRI responded in 2010 with the Alexa and the ALIV sensor, and suddenly filmmakers had a choice: shoot digital for the first time or hold on to film. Two different philosophies, Red pushing the digital frontier, ARRI preserving the emotion of film. But nothing truly changed until something else happened, something outside of cameras. The movie theater itself changed. Up until the late 2000s, even if you shot on a digital camera, your movie still needed a film print to play in theaters. Digital projection didn't exist in most cinemas. Film was literally the final step in the chain. But then the shift happened. Fast. Between roughly 2009 and 2012, theaters around the world converted to 100% digital projection. Film prints died almost overnight. For the first time ever, you could shoot digital, color digital, finish digital, project digital. Film was no longer required anywhere, and that instantly changed what cinematic meant. While the world was rushing into digital, ARRI stayed consistent. From 2010 forward, the Alexa line kept the ALIV sensor at its core. Same philosophy, same feel, same emotional response. Filmmakers loved it because it felt familiar. It looked like the movies they grew up watching. And even as Panasonic and Sony didn't enter the true high-end cinema space until years later, directors who could choose any camera system often stayed with ARRI because the highlight roll-off felt more organic. The skin tones looked more alive. The image felt gentle instead of clinical. ARRI didn't chase resolution. They stuck with what mattered to them, the feeling of the image. And that consistency made ARRI the gold standard of digital cinema. Red, on the other hand, kept pushing. Red Dragon 2013, more dynamic range, more color depth, a big leap in digital cinema quality. Red Helium 2016, the camera I'm using. 8K resolution, ultra sharp, super clean, a modern, bold, almost hyper-detailed look. Loved for commercials, loved for high-end visual effects, but very digital compared to ARRI. Red Monstro 2017, a return to a more organic, smoother aesthetic. Still digital, still modern, but more cinematic than Helium. Red wasn't trying to mimic film. They were evolving digital cinema, and each Red sensor had its own personality. Then Panasonic and Sony stepped forward. Panasonic Varicam 2014 to 2016, dual native ISO, beautiful color science, excellent highlight behavior. Many filmmakers saw it as the closest thing to ARRI without being ARRI. Sony Venice 2018, Sony's answer to high-end cinema. Full-frame sensor, great color, strong highlight roll-off, a much more filmic aesthetic than the Sony video look. Venice finally gave Sony a true cinema identity. But even with Varicam and Venice pushing cinema forward, the film-like benchmark still belonged to ARRI, because ARRI's sensor design wasn't just digital, it was a philosophy. This is where things get blurry. Once everything went digital, cameras and projectors, the definition of film look started drifting. Some people decided 8K sharpness was cinematic. Some people decided ARRI was cinematic. Some people decided low light performance was cinematic. Some people decided shallow depth of field was cinematic. Everybody was watching different cameras, different workflows, different resolutions, and calling all of it cinematic. That's why today, when someone says film look, you have to ask, which film look? ARRI's film look? Red's film look? Varicam's film look? Or Venice's film look? Once projection went digital, the standard disappeared. By the late 2010s, digital wasn't imitating film anymore. It had its own look. ARRI remained the closest to film, Red carved out a modern digital cinema, Varicam and Venice shaped their own flavor. But this entire era proves the point of this series. The look doesn't come from the grade. It doesn't come from the codec. It comes from the sensor. And every sensor, ARRI, Red, Panasonic, Sony, captures the world differently. In episode 4, we'll jump into another revolution, the DSLR and mirrorless era, a time when anyone could buy a stills camera and suddenly get shallow depth of field, full frame sensors, and cleaner images than ever before. It felt cinematic, but it wasn't the same as cinema. We'll break down why in episode 4. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you there.